Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the baby turtles, the crunching of their feet. Take a deep breath and connect to life that has just been created. The first steps. The curiosity, the wonder, the questions that must be in their minds. What is this world? Or perhaps a deep knowing of what it is already, a deeper knowing that we may not know. Okay, Phil, you know, I could sit for an hour and listen to turtles, but I suppose we should start the service. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you are here today. Welcome to the Compassion Consortium Sunday service. I'm Reverend Sarah Bowen. I'm an animal chaplain and interspecies minister, and I'm joined today by the co-founders, Reverend William Melton, Reverend Erica Allison, and Victoria Moran. And as usual, Phil is on the bridge running our technology. I'd also like to give a warm welcome to our guest speaker, Hereditary Chief Phil Lane Jr., and our Compassion in Action guest, Lisa Levinson. And a big hello to all the rest of you as well. Thanks for sharing some of your Sunday here with us. We meet the fourth Sunday of every month. If it's your first time here, welcome. If it's not, good to see you again. And we hope to see all of you very, very often. Throughout the service, do whatever it is that helps you feel comfortable, feels engaged. If you need to hydrate, or if you need to look off screen, or if you need to stretch, do any or all of those things. All is welcome. I'd also like to wish our Jewish members a very happy first night of Hanukkah. I hope your week is filled with delightful miracles. And I'd also like to wish everyone who's joining us from the United States a slightly belated happy Thanksgiving, and may your week be filled with gratitude for life. Today, I'm speaking to you from Guayaquil, Ecuador, the land cherished by the Monteño Huanca Vilca. Having just returned from the Galapagos Islands, which is home to many beings that live nowhere else on Earth, including the marine iguana, who's amazing and spits salt out of its nose, and just the cutest snot. Could be cute, I don't know, but it can. It's amazing. The Galapagos giant turtle, the flightless cormorant. I can never pronounce this poor bird's name. Cormorant, and the blue-footed booby. There's over 9,000 species that live on these islands, and over 97% of the land here is uninhabited by human animals. And so while it might be tempting from that idea alone to consider this place paradise, this week I have experienced many of the same darn challenges that I do when I'm at home in New York. Humans acting with inconsistency. As I started studying for this trip, I became keenly aware of the legacy of Charles Darwin, who collected specimens to take home in the name of scientific knowledge. I would call those beings, not specimens. And I became very critical of people's suggestions of humans discovering things, in the same way that our hearts beat faster and we get questions in our minds when people talk about lands that become discovered. Questions about decolonization and restorative justice for humans and other than humans alike are all up in my mind this month. And they followed me here as I tried to escape Thanksgiving and found I couldn't escape human inconsistency. In Galapagos, there's a sordid history of manhandling and killing giant turtles, which I'll spare you all the details of. These beings can live for up to 175 years and weigh over 500 pounds, and it's likely they have passed down knowledge of just what humans are about. And so I am glad to see there are many initiatives here where we are turning the narrative or changing the narrative. Protection through Ecuadorian law and under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Some of these rules and regulations look really useful. Some don't go quite as far as I'd like them to go, but I've had a really good time looking into how important it is to protect the animals and the lands and the waters and the humans that are still on this earth. Thanks, living. And so this is a place where I have found love for animals and exploitation of animals alike. Has anyone seen those together where you live? Yeah. And it's very frustrating for those of us that are gathered here. A prime example that I encountered was snorkeling and then going shipboard and watching people have a seafood buffet. After being exuberant about their interactions with amazing colored fishes and other sea life, I was very curious, and so I turned to my favorite spiritual practice, asking very snarky, curious questions. It went something like this. Isn't it curious that we want to swim with them in one moment, and we're willing to eat them in the next moment? How does our brain make that okay? What do you think? A few people were willing to engage in this conversation with me, and were then able to learn that the chef was willing to make them a vegan diet of vegan ceviche like she was making me, and it was amazing. And some of the other folks on the shipboard were not so willing to have that conversation with me and pretty much ran from me anytime I approached them. Now that's probably overselling it, but but I realized that some people have a willingness to hear these stories and others not so much. And so Galapagos, like many places, is a place where I acknowledge loss and sadness, and I also feel hope. The hope that my well-placed, gentle, curious, slightly snarky questions about human consistencies are bouncing around in people's minds on their plane rides back home, and that those seeds will grow. Kurt Vonnegut, in his classic book, Galapagos, which I'm finally reading while I'm here, queried about our human brains. In the book, the narrator from 1,000,000 years in the future observes this. Can it be doubted that 3-kilogram brains were once nearly fatal defects in the evolution of the human race? What source was there back then, save for our over-elaborate nervous circuitry for the evils we were seeing or hearing about everywhere? My answer, there was no other source. This was a very innocent planet, except for those great big brains. As a theologian, I hang on Vonnegut's words and I love their implications. The higher power that I experience connection with in my spiritual practice is not the cause of anthrozoological quandaries that break my heart, nor the anthropogenic violence to the planet that leaves me bereft. My higher power has nothing to do with causing those. Humans do. So I think in closing that each of us must commit to looking deep, deep inside ourselves for our own consistencies, not just pointing our fingers at the snorkelers at the seafood buffet, as I am wont to do, but to look deep inside ourselves and see the inconsistency with how we treat humans, tortoises, blue-footed boobies, chickens, tuna, flora, fauna, waters, skies, soils, plant life, trees, gnats, mosquitoes, some of those beings we talked about last month, waters and skies, soils and glaciers. And so to close my rambling remarks today from Ecuador, I'd ask you to take a deep, deep breath with me. For a moment, focus your great big brain on one word: compassion. Over to you, Reverend William.
Thank you very much. So for those of you who have joined us before, you know that the Compassion Consortium is founded on the basis of what we call the Tenets of Agreement. And we start every spiritual service with a reading of these tenets. And today the tenets will be read by Dave Simon. Dave is the author of Metonomics and a lawyer and advocate for sustainable consumption. He serves on the advisory council of the Animal Legal Defense Fund and on the boards of Animal Protection and Rescue League and the APRL Fund. Dave has been involved as counsel in a number of lawsuits against animal abusers and the venues that support them, including lawsuits against foie gras producers, ritual chicken killers, a rodeo, a horse track, and a restaurant selling an adulterated vegan meat substitute. So, Dave, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn this over to you to read the Tenets of Agreement.
Well, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure and honor for me to be involved and to read these. Tenets of Agreement. We acknowledge a divine force at the heart of the universe and in all living beings. We may refer to this force as God, but it is known by many names and appears in different forms or as formless. We recognize the common moral principles inherent within all wisdom traditions. We affirm that compassion, reverence for life, and nonviolence are fundamental to religious faith and moral philosophy, and are to be extended to all sentient beings. We stand by the principles of inclusion, diversity, and equality, and hold these as essential in our human relations. We hold that non-human animals are imbued with the same essence of life and love as our human animals, and that there is moral parity between us. We avow that humans do not own the earth, its resources, or its inhabitants, but instead must be involved in their protection and care. We endeavor to eat and live in a kind and sustainable manner, moving away from animal foods and animal-derived clothing, as well as any activities that cause harm to our fellow beings, human or otherwise. We aim to provide spiritual comfort, fellowship, and food for thought to those practicing or exploring a vegan lifestyle. We offer guidance and peer support for all those seeking a more compassionate and spiritual life. We commit to sharing these principles freely, with humility and respect, in support of non-human animals and the earth.
Thank you so much. It is time in our service now to move into our interspecies spiritual practice. This is our chance to go within and to access that source of support, that source of the beyond through different techniques and different methods that we demo throughout these services. Today, we are going to be joined by a little grass-bound friend, and we're going to be doing a slow down meditation. This is all about getting slow. So Phil, if you'll pull that up, I'll go ahead and introduce the video as you're bringing that forward. So for a few minutes here, before you hit play, just a second, we're going to go ahead and drop in. So just find a comfortable position. Intentionally, we're picking a slow down meditation because, as Rev Sarah alluded to at the beginning, this is a busy season for many people. And it's a nice reminder every once in a while to just slow down, slow the mind down, slow the body down, slow the thoughts down, and get still, get quiet, get slow. And for the next few minutes, we're going to just do that together with some nice meditative music, and by watching our friend here move slowly through on their path. So I'll just invite you to find a comfortable position. We'll start the video, drop in, and just see if you have thoughts that come in. Just let those thoughts slow down. And we'll just linger here for a few moments, taking a few deep breaths, just really feeling into the peace that can be cultivated when we slow our minds, slow our thoughts. And when you feel ready, just begin to wiggle fingers, toes, bring yourself back into this moment, back into this gathering together. I thank you all for your practice today and turn it over to Victoria and our guest.
Thank you, Reverend Erica. Oh, between the turtles and the music and the little slug, I'm already in an altered state. So it's beautiful to be with everybody today. And it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our special guest for the month of November, Hereditary Chief Phil Lane. There is a full bio for him in our order of service, and I invite you to read that. I'll just tell you a few of the high points, of which there are many. Hereditary Chief Phil Lane is an enrolled member of the Ihanktonwan, Dakota, and Chickasaw nations and is an internationally recognized leader in human, community, spiritual, and economic development. He holds master's degrees in education at the National University and Public Administration at the University of Washington. A vegan himself, Chief Lane pronounced December 22nd, 2020 as Indigenous Vegan Day, the day that shall not be followed by night. Welcome, Chief Phil Lane.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kindness of inviting me to join you.
Well, it's absolutely a pleasure to have you, and I think no one here is unaware of the difficulties of this time of year, and thinking of the Native peoples of the Americas, the horrendous history, the difficulties that our Native people face today, and yet also the tremendous hope that love and this reverence for life that was mentioned earlier can bring to healing all wounds. So it is with great honor and humility that I welcome you to the Compassion Consortium on behalf of all of us. So if you would start out, please, and just give us a little bit of history of how you started out and what's contributed to the man you are today.
Well, you know, I had two wonderful parents who both met at the Haskell Indian School or Haskell Institute in Lawrence, Kansas, when they were sent there as young children to get their education. In my father's case, he was 12 years old. My grandmother died when he was 5. He was raised by my great-grandfather, Tipi Sapa, Reverend Philip Deloria, and Black Lodge. And then, so he was then sent on to Haskell when he was 12. And then when he was 17, my mother arrived from the Chickasaw Nation. And he always said, you know, son, as soon as I saw your mother, he said, that's the woman I was going to marry. That's the woman I'm going to marry. And sure enough, you know, 10 years later, he came back with, he'd saved $2,000. Of course, he somehow made it through Oregon State University, got a degree in forestry. It took him 5 years because of such a poor education. But he got those because in our tradition, when you ask someone to marry you, and of course it's all kind of behind the scenes, you give lots of horses and you really demonstrate your love and commitment and capacity to take care of the person of that family. And so that was his horses, the $2,000, and his degree. And so both my mom and dad come from hereditary families of leadership. My father's side, my great-grandfather, Tipi Sapa, Philip Deloria, was well, really interesting how spiritual things happen. You know, there's an account written by a Presbyterian minister who went over to the Yahuntwa camp across the Missouri when they were inaugurating him as chief at just 17 years old. And of course, the Yahuntwa and all the Oceti-Chikoan, who people call the Great Sioux Nation, you know, but it's these 7 sacred council fires, were very, very much living as hunters and moved on the plains. So we weren't sedentary. And of course, when the really came to a place where you had no choice because of treaties, you had to give up your you know, faith in practices in your own traditional ways and had to become quote unquote Christian. Well, my great grandfather, of course, at first he shot arrows at the Episcopal church that they put up on the Indian Sioux reservation. But every time he rode by, they were singing hymn number 163 in the Dakota hymn book. And of course, the Catholic missionaries, everything was in Latin, but the Episcopals, they turned the Bible and all the songs and so forth into the indigenous languages in Dakota. So we kept hearing this one song about Great Jehovah. So anyway, he came in and when he came in, he said, I want to become a member of this religion. They said, oh, well, you know, you have to cut your hair and give up your chieftainship and this and that. And he looked over and there was a picture of Jesus. He said he left and said, I'm a strong man. But he came back because he realized he could see what was going to unfold. And he then formed the Corn Planter Society, which was a group of men who began then to receive food from the earth rather than being able to hunt because they wasn't able to. The buffalo literally were at one time 60 million. And then after the Custer massacre, they call it, but when Custer came into a Sundance camp and was killed against the orders of his own generals, they then had the Starve or Surrender Act enacted by the U.S. Congress, which meant that they did everything to exterminate the buffalo and were able in a short time to bring it, well, 60 million, but there were still quite a few by around 1875. But by 1890, there was about 500 left, out of 60 million, literally. And so it was starve or surrender. So it was a great time, and he was really quite challenged. I mean, they would come and warriors would come and ride over their gardens and so forth and destroy their gardens because, you know, it was complete change. I mean, we're talking about a complete lifestyle change. But at the same time, we had a prophecy within our Teospayan, with our Dakota, Deloria and Yahawachasha Teospai, from an event that happened. This is my great-grandfather. His name was Yahawachasha, Owl Man. And he was both the spiritual leader of the Holy Man Society, but also the Atasha, or chief, one of the chiefs of the White Swans. Now, being a chief, by the way, means you're the last to eat, you're the last to sleep, you're the last to do anything because the people come first. So it's a whole different concept of what an Atasha is, to serve the people. So anyway, he was able to do some quite remarkable healing. And but he began to raise this one particular bay horse he wouldn't let anybody else ride. And they didn't understand that, but they could see he was giving him all this extra attention. At the same time, he was mentoring Mathogi, brown bear. It's kind of like, he called him father-son relationship, but he was like his nephew, you'd call in more European understanding. But what happened was a father would entrust a brother with the spiritual education of a son, because the relationship between a father and son is a little bit different. Anyway, so it was just getting ready to go out for a big buffalo hunt. And I understand now, because our prophecies do say that in the future we will leave behind eating animal relatives. But of course, that was what our food supply. So please bear with me when I tell you this story, because it has a lot of meaning beyond just the superficial kind. So at the time, we're talking about the 1830s, sometimes these herds were 100 miles long and 50 miles wide when they come up from the south. And buffalo really have a tremendous lesson to teach us animal relatives, because under danger, the old bull buffaloes go out on the edge, just to be the first to go. And the younger bulls, the older mothers, the younger mothers, and then right in the center are the children. And right in the very center of the center is the white buffalo, the albino white buffalo, because there's different white buffaloes, but the one we're talking about is a pure albino white buffalo. That means their toes are pink, their tongue is pink, their nose is pink, their eyes are pink, and their skin is pink. And so because of having pink eyes, they're nearsighted. And so the buffalo always protect the weakest. So here's that old, it was a bull buffalo, pink with pink eyes in the center, being protected. Well, the prophecy said this. It came down through our Hihawachasha Deloria Teospies, White Swan Dakotas, said that a white buffalo would appear. Now, our understanding in our relationship with animals is because we had really, the buffalo provided everything for us. It provided, the stomach was used for a place to cook. Every dimension, every part of the buffalo was utilized. Nothing was wasted, nor did we take any more than we needed. So the buffalo was really held in great reverence by us. And we'd always pray and the Creator, and we pray to the buffalo relative, our people are hungry. We need to have shelter to pick our teepees and so forth and so on. And we ask that our relative might sacrifice themselves so that we might live. And of course, we would go out then to hunt. But these buffalo, now, this was not an easy task. It's not like the buffalo day. They're huge, like that. They could just take a horse and just throw them out. So you had to have really good horses, to get inside that herd. And so you can imagine, here's this big, like a river of buffalo. So anyway, they sent out the scouts to see when that southern herd was coming. And then Matogi, for some reason, came to Hihawachasha and said, he said, Father, could I ride that horse in this hunt today? And for some reason, nobody could understand. He said, yes. He said, but be very careful. Be very careful. And so here they were. There was about 300 Yankton riders. Struck by the Ree was the head chief. And they were up there. Here comes this river of buffalo coming. Huge. And of course, only those seasoned warriors who had really the best horses could get inside to get the more tender meat. And because those old bull buffaloes were really tough and hard, and so the young people that didn't know how to kind of get stragglers from behind. So anyway, here they were lined up in sacred societies, meaning that they really were very disciplined. And all of a sudden, one of the scouts yelled out, there's a white one right in the middle. And it was prophesied that a white buffalo would appear. And by the way, these white buffaloes at that time, when there were 60 million, maybe would be seen maybe once every 80 years. That's it. But it was said that a bull white buffalo would appear and to signalize a great spiritual wintertime that was coming. A great spiritual wintertime. Great time of great suffering, but a time of great learning, time of great gathering of strength. And how do you know what lies are if you live in truth? How do you know what deception is when you're straightforward and so forth and so on? So they had no idea what's this great spiritual wintertime, but they knew this, that those who were of that lineage, and there's many, of that white buffalo gave itself to us. And we we would survive, not only survive through the wintertime, we'd survive to see the springtime, the spiritual springtime that's occurring upon this Mother Earth at this time. And that all we've been through, every bit of all of us, by the way, was there for our own perfecting. That everything we would understand was in a way, ultimately, a blessing. Especially when we understand the nature of the soul, the nature of life after death, these kind of things. So he said, yes, you may. So you can imagine, here's these 300 riders up on top of this hill looking down. There's a white one right in the middle. The scout yells out, boom, like that. Boom, they started. This horses going. At that time, there was no rules. It was the survival of the people. That's what it was about. And so finally, and I've told this story to my elders many times, there was 2 riders left. That big bull, white bull was going. 2 riders left. There was a rider on a black horse that was kind of leading the way, an older rider. But here, it's so important. That black horse started to bleed through his nose. And I always, no matter this going on, my grandmother, my father, my uncle would always pause there. He said, that man, in his kindness to that relative, that horse, that he said, in a spiritual quest, we don't want to hurt anything, no one, anything, and if we can possibly help it. So he pulled that black horse back, pulled him back, so he wouldn't hurt himself. He said, go on with him, go on with him. Boy, boom. And here they were. Brown bear on that bay horse. Now, very interesting. You're riding like this. Now, you have one opportunity to bring that buffalo down with one arrow, boom, like this. Boom. First of all, what kind of physical characteristics would you have to have? Here I am. You can imagine. Here's a buffalo going like this. Here's a horse right beside. And all I have is a bow and arrow. What physical characteristics would the rider have to have?
Well, tremendous eyesight, clarity, focus.
But a very particular characteristic that that some of us have, but most of us don't.
What's that?
Well, now think about it. We're if you again, this is the past now. I'm not saying we need to move into a world where we don't have to do, but that was the world. Yes. Okay, so you're riding up on where would that arrow have to go first of all? To
the buffalo.
Yes, but where?
Like
in one shot, how could you bring that buffalo down?
The head, the middle of the head?
No. A huge head. Buffaloes are, you could.
The heart?
You could, yes, the heart. Okay. And now how do you get to the heart?
I don't know. I've never hunted.
Where's the heart at? Where's the heart at?
In the center.
No, it's just like us. Where's our heart at?
Chest.
Yeah, but where?
Middle, upper chest.
Left hands.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, got it.
Right? Yep. Okay. So what side of the buffalo do you have to come up on?
The left.
Okay, good. Now we're getting down to it. Now, what's the physical characteristic the rider has to have to shoot that arrow into the heart of the buffalo from the left side?
Left-handed?
Absolutely. That's it. And tall. And I met Brown Bear's great grandson. Of course, they're tall and left-handed.
Huh.
Well, anyway, so he got up, boom, and that arrow went clear down the quiver. And the buffalo went down. And they wept. They wept. They wept that such a sacred relative would give themselves that they might live, that they might survive. And it might be in a way similar to the idea of the whole communion in the Christian church, because they went back. And what they did was they built a cottonwood foundation and put sage, really fresh sage, and they put sage in the buffalo's ears and nose and mouth, and they roll that buffalo on that cottonwood kind of platform. And they had 4 horses. I always asked my father, I said, maybe they was a trap. No, he said this. They honored that buffalo. They put 4 horses between them. And they came, they sang 3 times, and then the 4th time they entered the camp, and they ate together. One last time before this long spiritual wintertime came. To remember this, because we always know we love to honor people, because we know if we honor somebody, we say, you know, look what Elizabeth did. Look what April did. Look what Heather did. You know, and then everybody's saying, oh, I want to be like them. So sure enough, they had a big, after the feast, they brought Matogi out, brown bear. They honored him to the 4 directions, and they told the whole story of what happened. Different people spoke about it. But then came the interesting question. They said, okay, now they knew all this, but struck by the Ree's responsibility was to in a way, bring it alive so they'd remember it. And so he said, okay, who is the man that trained the rider and trained the horse that fulfilled this prophecy? And here comes Hihamashasha, Owlman, leading that horse out. And he had thunder and lightning up here on his left-hand side. He had eagle feathers in his braids, in his mane. And so then came the last question. Struck by the Reese said, what's his name? And Hihamashasha reached into a big buffalo bag and pulled out a necklace of eagle claws this big, and this room over his neck. And he said, Eagle Claws, that's his name. And so it was prophesied that from that lineage, Russell Means is part of that lineage. Many, my uncle Vine Deloria Jr., my uncle Sammy Deloria, so many. Face spotted eagle, sister face spotted, Edna Fleury, so many that we would live to see that day. And so that's part of, for me, from my father. My mother, my great grandparents died in the Trail of Tears. My grandfather, John Wesley Parker, was raised by his aunt, who was the wife of the governor of the Chickasaws, and he became head of the Chickasaw Senate and so forth and so on. So in a way, that path of leadership was before me, but it was really, I think, a spiritual awakening I went through back in 1967. That really, because at that point, I was so full of hatred and anger and rage at what had happened and what happened to my mother and father and what happened to the relatives I knew. I was just, and anger and rage and hatred just eats you up inside. And when you have that inside yourself, you want to, that's where, for me, athletics was the way I really let it go. But then before you know it, that doesn't help. Then alcohol and drugs. So I was to the point, really, I think I was 22 years old. I just was, I'd fight, somebody, I thought somebody was not saying something nice about myself or many people, I'd fight. Unhealthy relationships. But then, all those things that have been taught me, I encountered a spiritual source. And all of a sudden I felt like my body was on fire, just burning, everything burning. And then, I began to see and understand these prophecies of black elk and other prophecies have been given to me, the white buffalo prophecy to my family. I went to Bolivia in 1971 in March and went there in the mountains with the Quechua Aymaras and understood then from them, these elders who took me under their wing. We walked all over those mountains, where only indigenous people were Quechua Aymaras, out to Lake Titicaca, Island of the Sun, on July 9th, 1971. We really, truly fulfilled that prophecy of that reunion of the condor, the Quetzal. The condor and eagle, now we've expanded to Quetzal from Central America. But from there, that's been the time, I guess, that as best I can. And again, I am, learned probably more from my mistakes than what I've accomplished. But our thing is that the prophecies, without question, said that after a long spiritual wintertime, we would awaken the indigenous people of the Americas. Now, I think it's so important that we be real clear that we are not these earth suits. From our perspective as indigenous people, when we're born in this physical plane of time and space, each of us is born here a sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting. Our purpose here is to grow our spiritual arms and legs and eyes and ears, just like our purpose in the mother's womb is to grow our physical arms and legs and eyes and ears. And it's so important to put this perspective of how I feel about Thanksgiving, to first of all understand the soul's life after death. And what is the soul of the soul that we have? First of all, our soul is independent of and the very source of our body's existence. If our body is destroyed, our soul and spirit remain unharmed. These are, by the way, a little thing I put together to share the essence of my understanding. Our soul, our human spirit, is independent of our physical body. Our soul is free and sanctified beyond this plane of time and space. All the powers that distinguish us as human beings, reason, memory, abstract thought, creativeness, inventiveness, willpower, are all properties of the soul, not the body. A love that anyone may have had for anyone will not be forgotten in the spiritual worlds, nor will we forget the life we had in this physical world. In the spiritual world, we'll recognize one another, we'll seek union, a spiritual union, and that's already here. We're in that spiritual world. If you think about it, how we connect with those relatives, because there's a spiritual connection. We call that Hunka relatives. There's a blood relatives, and Hunka, that's the spiritual relatives. Sometimes our spiritual relatives are closer than our own blood relatives. In fact, sometimes our blood relatives can be our greatest challenge. The relationship.
Amen, especially at holiday time.
Yes.
And we have 1 minute to go, Chief Phil.
Okay.
Actually, we don't even have that, but let's extend 1 minute.
Okay. I just say this last one. The soul has no gender, race, ethnicity, or class. This reality makes all forms of prejudice, whatever they may be, intolerable and unacceptable. The soul is not divided. It is a reflection of the oneness of our Creator. And I didn't know I was going to get down to this story, but I'd rather tell a story and get off into some of the things. So it's so good to be here.
Thank you so very much. Thanks for all you're doing.
Yes, and one thing I really want to do, though, I have to put this one little quote up here. And this is the one that I was listening. Train your children from their earliest days to be infinitely tender and loving to animals. If an animal is sick, let the children try to heal it. If it is hungry, let them feed it. If it's thirsty, let them quench its thirst. If weary, let them see that it rests. Quote comes from a Paris talk by Abdu'l Baha.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Bless you. I hope you
Okay,
can stay and be part of the conversation later.
All righty.
All the best. And now we'll be passing this along to Erica. Are you going to get us up moving?
I am. I'm going to get us up and moving. Thank you to Chief Phil. And I personally look forward to the day when that prophecy comes true and we all evolve beyond the point of hunting and killing and eating other beings. And I think we're helping to bring that movement about. So thank you all for being a part of that. So what we're going to do here before we bring in our Compassion in Action guest is we're just going to get our bodies moving a little bit. We've been here about an hour now, so it's a good time to check in with yourself. If you need to shake any energy off, go ahead and shake off some energy. Sometimes during this moment, we are also inspired by our animal companion friends. And if there's a particular, I don't know, movement that you want to make that seems inspired by a particular being, I always, in this moment, like to go to some of the birds with the large wingspans. Maybe in honor of Rev Sarah and her trip to the Galapagos, maybe like stretch your neck, a little turtle-like, bring it down into your shoulders, stretch it up and out, down into your shoulders, up and out. Just shake it off a little bit. Excellent. So I'm very excited now to introduce you to today's guest. The Compassion in Action section of our program is all about just inspiring members of our community by viewing what others do to bring compassion alive in their lives. And Lisa Levinson is a perfect example of this. We're going to introduce you to her today. Lisa Levinson directs In Defense of Animals Interfaith Vegan Coalition and its Sustainable Activism Campaign, which offers emotional and spiritual support for animal activists via a helpline, support groups, and online events. Lisa organizes vegan spirituality groups and retreats to explore veganism as a spiritual practice. She co-founded Public Eye, Artists for Animals, which teaches compassion for animals through the arts. And she also founded the Toad Detour to help them migrate safely across the road in Philadelphia. So I would like to introduce you a little bit more deeply to Lisa's work by showing a short video that she has prepared for us.
What did you think of the vegan meal?
I loved it. I'm vegetarian, and so I was very appreciative that I could just eat without thinking about any of it. Because usually that doesn't happen. I have to like pick and choose. So I think it was awesome that you all decided to do that.
I'm very grateful for the thoughtful and intentional ethics behind the meal, and it tasted wonderful. And sometimes you don't get those two things together.
You know, to be honest, I can tell you this is the very first vegan meal in my whole life. So I may have to think about maybe start building a new tradition, a new habit, because I really enjoy all of them.
It was really interesting to learn all the faiths really fundamentally view animals as creatures of the earth that we need to live harmoniously with and protect and look after and not abuse.
To find a group of individuals who are supporting everything that my values and ethics stand for, and to get to feel that support and know that there is a group of organizations and wonderful, warm people who are sharing the same path and sharing the same types of information. I've learned a great deal, and I hope to pass it on. So I'm grateful to the Interfaith Vegan Coalition for that.
It's been my experience that this is really the way that we're going to continue to sustain our planet, and that by continuing to consume the way that we have been consuming, with meat eating and with feeding the amount of cattle and animals, the nutrients and the water that we need as a planet to sustain, that the only way that we're actually going to continue to sustain is to go green. And so I just really believe that this is happening. Where is my button? Here we go. This is the future, and that this is the way to go. It may seem far-fetched for some, but I'm saying yes to this. So plant-based 2026, we can do it right here and right now. Take a step. It's yours to do. That's it.
So Lisa, welcome. Let's bring her into the spotlight here. Excellent. So Lisa, your work, you've given us an example of what it's like to blend spirituality into vegan advocacy. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this came into your life?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a really probably long and winding road, but to make it a short block, so I started Vegan Spirituality, which explores veganism as a spiritual practice, and then was brought in In Defense of Animals, where I was doing this animal advocacy full-time, and actually had a conversation with an IDA supporter who was saying, you know, it would be so great if the religions of the world all got together, you know, if all of our vegan advocacy groups could get together to help raise awareness among the millions of people who aspire to have a sacred practice or a religious practice, faith-based communities around the world, to look at that through a new lens, through the vegan lens. That would really make a difference. And he was saying that that was one of his wishes and dreams. And I thought, wow, well, maybe I can do that. Maybe I can help. And so Judy Carmen and I co-founded the Interfaith Vegan Coalition as that effort to try to bring together all of the groups that were already working to promote faith-based advocacy through various tools within their own traditions, and then to have a consortium so that we could have an actual voice in the world. we could, put together media releases. We could speak our truth to the world as these are all the vegans who are also faith-based. So for me, it kind of aligned together with this coalition.
So inspiring. And of course, we partner closely with you because we do very aligned work, and we've gotten to together interact with each other at vegan spirituality conferences. And there's many more of these opportunities for people out there who are listening, who are interested in how the intersection of spirituality and veganism play together. So Lisa, if you wouldn't mind leaving contact information for people in the chat so that we can find you. And if you would like to speak more to Lisa, I invite you to stick around afterwards into the breakout rooms, and you might get matched with her in one of the breakout rooms to learn a little bit more about her beautiful work in the world. So thank you, Lisa, for being such an inspiration to us and for preparing that beautiful video that highlights all the work you're doing.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm honored to be part of this and really support everything that you're doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. Over to you, Rev William.
This is the point in our service where we bear witness to the challenges and joys that the human and other than human beings around us may be facing. So Phil, can you open up the chat room so that everyone can participate? And if possible, set it so that when people choose to insert something into the chat, it will be viewed by everyone. And also, could you highlight Brother Phil, because he's going to lead us in our blessings and prayers section. The world's spiritual traditions provide many meaningful and inspired ways to offer blessings, prayers, and support. So this month, Brother Phil will be sharing his spiritual traditions of the Ihantawan, Dakota, and Chickasaw nations. So first, I invite all of you to insert the names of any humans or other than humans in the chat who are in need of healing, who have passed on from this life. I also invite you to include any joys that you are thankful for from this past month into the chat. So Brother Phil, can you now lead us in our blessings and prayers segment?
Yes. Well, especially want to remember Judith Murdoch and all those that are put on this prayers. O Tinkashla, Creator of the universe, most beloved one, all powerful one, most kind one, most compassionate one, ever forgiving one. O Ancient of Days, O blessed beauty, we call upon your holy power that sustains, inspires, infuses the entire universe and all our ancestors, past, present, and future, are close at our closest vein, to join us in this prayer, especially remembering all our animal relatives, those that swim, those that crawl, those with four legs, those that fly. Creator, we ask that the consciousness of the human family might be transformed so that we understand that we are related to all life, and the hurt of one is the hurt of all, and the honor and the healing and the restoration of one is the honor and the healing and restoration of all. And Creator, we give honor to all the tribes and nations of four directions, Father Sky and Mother Earth. I'll close with this prayer for unity. O my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal unto them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps with a light of knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper, the Lord. We finish our prayers, we always say our name. My names are Chinupasapa and Shunkmano, and I stand responsible before the Creator for my words and my actions. So wonderful to be here with my relatives.
Thank you very much, Brother Phil. So in closing this segment, as we always do, I invite you to all speak from your homes our collective blessing, our closing prayer. May all creatures everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of our life contribute to this happiness and this freedom for all. May it be so. Amen. So mote it be. This is the time where we thank you for joining us today. And we would like to let you know about our upcoming events. So we hope you'll join us next month for our Sunday service on December 26th with guest Keith Akers. Keith is a writer and activist. He is the author of Disciples and the Lost Religion of Jesus, which explore the roots of Christianity, specifically the disciples and early Jewish followers of Jesus and their beliefs in relationship with Jesus. And I've read these books and I find them fascinating. I think I have shared with you previously that while I don't specifically identify as a Christian, I consider myself a follower of Jesus to the point that one of my many tattoos is a sign of the Ixus, the sign of Jesus. And I find the life of the historical Jesus fascinating. And Keith's books and our discussion in December will focus on the people who really knew him, the Ebionites, the Nazorians, the Essenes, and their relationship with Jesus, their influences on Jesus and his influences on them. And perhaps even more interesting is that we will discuss with Keith the question of, was Jesus a vegetarian or was he not? And we'll be discussing also, well, why is it important and why does anybody care? So also, please join us at our upcoming Compassion Consortium book talk on Tuesday, December 7th at 8 p.m. We're going to be featuring the book Vegan Voices, Essays by Inspiring Change Makers. And this is a collection of inspiring essays from over 50 vegan activists, educators, artists, change makers on the whys and wherefores of the vegan diet and lifestyle. And we will be joined in this discussion by the editor, Dr. Joanne Kong, and contributors who contributed articles, Jean Bauer, president and co-founder of Farm Sanctuary, and Victoria Moran, who is president and co-founder of Main Street Vegan, and co-founder of the Compassion Consortium, and my wife, most important. So, lastly, if you enjoyed this service and would like to support future Compassion Consortium programming, we encourage you to donate on our website at the link posted in the chat box. So, I think I now turn it over to you, Sarah.
Yes, thank you, William. Wow. Wow, what a Sunday service. Thank you to Brother Phil for coming and speaking with us, for Lisa Levinson for sharing about her work, and for, that slug. I'm still thinking about Erica's slug. So that was a really great way for us to sink into the one of the beings that we don't often see or talk about around here, and I just love that. So for our discussion today, I was struck by, we always have a question that we send ourselves kind of off with into our groups, and we really do hope that you're going to stick around and get into some juicy conversation with us. And, I was thinking throughout Brother Phil's talk today about the challenges that we have sometimes when our family, our friends, our ancestry, our spiritual traditions include important rituals or stories or narratives or beliefs that in some way we may grow from or somehow have conflict or challenge with, or what do we do about that? I was struck also myself, I just celebrated 15 years sober this month. And when I got sober and I went to church and they offered me communion, I had an uh-oh moment because I no longer drank wine. And what do you do in that moment? And I know Brother Phil spoke also about some of the tension between his stories and his way of living as well. So that's that's not a question, it's a messy commentary. But I thought maybe I'd send us off to our groups today with that. What do we do? What do we do when we have these, well, I guess I'll go back to the word that I started today with, inconsistencies. how do we handle those? And thank you, Brother Phil, for highlighting those from your tradition as well. I think it really gave a lot to think about these important sacred stories and rituals, and what do we do now?